The first thing I want you to think about while we're going forward is to take stock of what is up with your house right now. Is it a time capsule, never been changed, needs some maintenance and updates? Is it a remodel? Did someone really do a number on it in the 1990s and now it kind of doesn't look mid-century anymore, or at any other period? Or something in between? Also, think about what, if anything, you have already done to the house that you want to add to, or sometimes roll back. And we can always pair design improvements with maintenance. So think about your maintenance checklist. If your paint is fading or failing or peeling, if you've got woodpeckers pecking on things, if your front door doesn't close properly or lets air in the winter or summer, all of those things might be an opportunity to do a style improvement as well as a maintenance improvement. And then finally, think about what features you have on your house that you like. Hey, Barb is just checking in from Brookfield, Wisconsin, 1958 ranch. This is great. So as you're thinking about that, I want to assure you that you are in the right place because you are so right to love the mid-century features of your mid-century house. Mid-century houses are fantastic. They are my personal obsession and mission in life. And my mission really is to prevent every mid-century house from getting mediocre remodels. And beyond that, what we're talking about today, to improve on mid-century houses as we go along. And that's because there are so many. There's probably something like 13 million houses built in the mid-century era. That's about an eighth of our US single-family housing stock. That's a lot of houses. And if they aren't loved, if they get resided in vinyl and painted beige, they end up just disappearing into the background. They come at risk for being, frankly, knocked down and put right into the landfill, or certainly not appreciated. But if we can appreciate them, if we can tune up their mid-century features, they have so much potential for longevity. They've been lasting 70 plus years at this point. They can last another 70 and beyond. These houses are built to go, and so we just have to take care of them. So a little bit of my background. This might ring a bell with you. I bought a mid-century house knowing that I liked it, but not really knowing that much about mid-century. And it was almost a time capsule, certainly from the exterior. This is its second paint color. There was a light yellow lead paint underneath this green that was peeling. It had been owned by just two families its entire time. And I wanted to figure out what was right to do for it. But as I started to learn a little bit more about the house itself and what I could do for it, I became more and more obsessed with mid-century. And you might have already found this to be happening, or you might be finding it to be happen right now. Over time, as you start to take on one little project after another, as you start to make one little tweak improvement after another, you will fall more and more down the mid-century rabbit hole, and you will fall more and more in love with your mid-century house. So here is the sort of update state of my house right now. This picture is actually from a couple of years ago, and I've done a few more things to it since then. But I'm a poster child for what we're talking about today. One after another, little improvements that add up to eventually the whole house feeling very much the way that I want it to. So a quick caveat before we keep on talking about curb appeal, we're talking about the exterior of your house today, but mid-century houses are all about the flow between inside and out. So things that happen on the inside of your house can affect what happens on the outside, can inform your choices, and vice versa. If, for example, your house has been totally stripped of its exterior character, bad vinyl siding, weird colors, you just don't know where to go to begin putting back the mid-century charm. If you've got anything original on the inside, that might be your jumping off point. For example, if you have your original door hardware, you might choose to match that sort of aged bronze that's very common in mid-century door handles to the new house numbers you choose for the exterior. You might choose a bronzy color for that and let that conversation happen between inside and out. And when you think about changes you're making to the outside, we're going to talk about starting small and adding up. These projects might flow between inside and out as well. You might make changes to your entry, to your mudroom, and they might lead you to making improvements in your kitchen over time. But today, we're talking about the outside. And here's what I want you to believe. It is okay to start small. It is good to start small. You don't have to have the time, the energy, the budget for a whole house renovation in order to make a little improvement this season that helps you like your house a bit more. So these start small changes do a couple of things. One, they get the ball rolling. They get you excited. They get you enthusiastic. You'll enjoy them. You'll feel happy in the meantime. You'll get that little dopamine hit of, I took charge of something and I made a change to my house, particularly. And I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. And now some of you I know are really in the middle of making big changes, but if you are stuck If you haven't done anything to your house yet because you don't know where to start, sometimes you just have to start with something and starting as soon as possible, not putting it off until you have the entire vision set, but beginning with something as simple as the front door can really get you going. And that can help you make decisions. You can learn from the process. You can gain experience in your own DIY skills, or if you're hiring out a handyman to do some of the projects, you'll learn how that feels to interact with people in your house. And it really becomes part of the process of moving towards something bigger. Or if you never want to take on a big remodel of your house, you can make, over time, pretty dramatic improvements by one small project after another. This is not a waste of time. This powerful idea of making a few little changes and then getting excited to make a few more changes and letting that fit into your existing life is how you make this happen rather than putting it off year after year after year. So the sweet spot is this little center of the Venn diagram. The changes you can knock off in a weekend are your exciting get start point, and you want them to add up to a whole house vision. Eventually, you're going to want a big picture vision for your house. You're going to want a master plan, even if you're going to do it one little piece at a time. But for now, I don't want you to get bogged down in thinking about the big picture. I want you to feel excited and start something ASAP. This kind of ties into a philosophy I've had since I started working with mid-century remodels, and I've been doing this now for 7 years, specializing exclusively in remodeling mid-century homes. There are 3 different levels you can think about going after changes to your house. A lot of people think a remodel means moving out of the house. It means drywall dust. It means it means a HELOC loan. It means a general contractor. And that, I would say, yes, that's the sort of general, the level 3, call a professional remodel. But I still think you're remodeling, when you take on a bunch of DIY projects, and you probably do too. If you were to remodel your kitchen yourself, remodel a bathroom yourself, convert a carport to a garage yourself, that feels like a remodel. But the smallest level, we went 3 and now 2 and then 1, switching out a light fixture for another light fixture, switching out a mailbox for another mailbox, putting some new and bigger modern house numbers on your house. That counts too. That adds up. And what often happens is people start with level 1 with the little replace and place changes, and then they either continue to make little changes forever. That's this line carrying through here. Or they step up. They get better at DIY. They take on bigger projects. They rope in a friend who knows more about remodeling. Or you might find that you're doing a small bathroom, for example. You do the tile, you call an electrician and a plumber, but you're still doing it. Or you might go from you've replaced your front door, you've replaced your house numbers, you've replaced your mailbox, and now you've thought about it long enough, you're ready to call in a professional. All 3 of these levels are a remodel, and they're a great way to go about planning an improvement for your house. So we're going to focus today on the level 1 changes. And I use this sketch because it is a sketch of my house that I did shortly after I moved in, thinking about what changes I might make to easily improve it. I thought about changing the front door color, adding a fun mailbox, switching out the light fixtures. Maybe, I still haven't done this and I still mean to, adding a little bit more space next to my rather narrow front stoop. This is also a sketch of my house. And this was what I was thinking I might go a little bigger. I might enclose the garage. And in fact, I have done this. I closed off the breezeway. And so I got the front half is exterior added garage storage space. And the back half is a mudroom that attaches into my kitchen and lets me flow from inside directly out to the backyard. Makes a viewing spot for my dog to watch the squirrels in the backyard. And I put modern house numbers on a front fence that I put out here. This is also showing a bunch of the ideas that I want you to think about when we'll get into these in more detail in a minute, when you're making improvements, having one material that repeats in a couple of places, playing up asymmetry, a long line next to a big block, and leaning into the shape of the house that exists. This is what I did not do, but considered. I could have put a small addition, a little bit of unfinished garage storage space going out about 4 feet, and then a tiny little enclosed vestibule that would have given me the covered entry that I don't have, and let me make my front windows more interesting. This would have taken my house from, frankly, probably the most boring, modest house on the street to one of the most interesting ones, and it would have been really a relatively non-destructive, non-chaotic addition. I wouldn't have had to move out of the house or do anything different. I could almost have DIY'd this, but before I got to this place, I started to get really busy doing work for other people, and I stopped doing as many projects for my house. So this is another thing I would say. While you have energy to do a little project on your house, do it, because you don't know what your energy is going to be like later in your life when you get busy. The other thing to think about levels one, two, three is that they can add up. So this is a client's house. And again, they were, speaking of busy, they were a family with two little kids. They really wanted to love their house more. It was there. They wanted to be their forever home. It's in the right spot. It's in the right school district and it's in the right neighborhood. But it had been a rental house for many years and it had really had a lot of the mid-century charm blanded right out of it. Vinyl siding, sort of blocky, more cut out all of the original interesting patterns that might have been there underneath this. It had small house numbers. So we made a set of improvements for them that they could do one, two, three over their different levels of energy over time. For start, bigger house numbers over the garage door. Replace the existing light fixture in place. Add in two more columns where there was already one column just to make that front entry a little more interesting. This is a fun secret. If you have an entry post that's just a blocky 4x4 or a metal pipe, it doesn't feel very graceful or exciting. It's probably doing a job. I don't want you to take it out, but you can give it to siblings and instantly make your house more interesting. So a couple of things they could do here, plus pull off their fake shutters. This house was desperately plain and like bland 80s cottage, and just these small changes made it much more interesting. But beyond that, they could keep all those changes, and then eventually they were planning to reside. So they could take off the vinyl siding and replace it with some wider panels. They could have some real fun around the windows, do panels above and below, horizontal siding between, and then a panel system around the garage. This starts to bring in more of the playfulness of the siding you get in a mid-century house. They could also add a little front privacy wall that just made just a smidgen more private area to put a table and chairs behind here and feel a bit more anchored as you sit out there and wave at people going by. And then they could go further. They could turn that into an actual patio that walks out at the same level as their front door. So the whole thing starts to feel more organic and anchored. So the transition from the vinyl siding, I don't want to shame them by showing you a picture, but the very, very bland house to a few simple improvements, to more improvements, to a house that really feels like it's got some of its asymmetry and its playful charm back. These are the kind of improvements that can add up over time. So, by the way, if you want to think about your big picture destination, I would invite you to check out my pre-recorded masterclass. It's an hour long, How to Plan a Mid-Century Remodel to Fit Your Life and Budget, which talks about how to think about the questions to ask yourself, the way to tune your life, your house, and your style, pull those pieces together, draft some options that are going to let you play with budget up and down the scale, and then pull together a master plan you're really aiming at. But for now, let's start with the mailbox and the front door. Let's talk about color. This depends on your personality, so your mileage may vary. If you have a favorite color, paint your front door your favorite color. If you're not sure, paint your door a color, and then if you don't like it, paint it again, a different color. I watched my across the street neighbor, who is a very avid DIYer, paint her front door, I think 6 different times over the course of one summer. She just went after it and she didn't quite like it. She went from sort of a mauve to a purple to a teal to a brighter teal and then back to a sort of a mid-range purple. My personal favorite was the second to last color she chose, but it's her front door. It's her favorite color. The thing is, when you're choosing paint, if I was talking to you about painting the whole exterior of your house, I would want you to do samples. I would want you to do swatches, see how it looks in real life in a big 2-foot by 2-foot swatch. But your front door is not much bigger than a 2-foot by 2-foot swatch. So grab a can of paint and get after it. However, if choosing a color feels crazy to you, feels too intense, feels like, well, how do you know what the right one is? You want a correct color? Then I'll recommend that you start with a mailbox. Choose a mailbox from, I like Modbox mailbox or any number of other mid-century style mailbox. They come in a bunch of pre-selected by a designer, lovely modern front colors, and then match that front door color to the mailbox. You can take any object to the paint store and have them scan it and give you an exact paint mix to match that color precisely. And once you've got that going, you're ready to go. By the way, anytime you're stuck on color, this is a great way to go about it. Find some pre-manufactured product on an Etsy store that specializes in mid-century or a vintage piece of fabric, anything you like that has a combination of a couple of colors, and then just copy them, build off of that. There is no harm or lack of honor in that process. So if you start with your front door, you've got something that welcomes you home. It's the face of your house. It says, come on in. And while you're painting the front door, by the way, level up and paint the storm door, if you've got one, the exact same color. yeah, you can paint a storm door even if it's metal. You just get a good primer on it first. Again, while you're at the paint store, ask them for the right recommendation. And then I also recommend you paint the trim around your front door the same color as the siding, because in a mid-century modern house, as opposed to say a mid-century traditional house or a cottage or a Victorian or any other era, you're not looking to draw little outline boxes around everything. It's a simple set of shapes. So you want the color emphasis to be on your front door. Moving on from here, you can do other little replace in place things. So your mailbox is probably a new mailbox going in the exact same spot as your old mailbox. Your light fixtures can also be replaced with the same spot, a new, more mid-century style light fixture. You can think about, I would say, a globe or a bow tie or anything pretty simple and minimalist, as opposed to what you'll often find on a mid-century traditional house is like a carriage lamp. So making that kind of substitution, you can hire a handyman to come in and do that if you don't feel comfortable with electrical wiring, or I would say carefully, caveat, watch a couple of YouTube videos, make sure you've turned off all the relevant breakers, and any careful person can probably rewire a light. So then that brings us to the modern house numbers. And this is, hey, Brandy, as the host of this whole program, asked me to pull this together for you, and we've done this once before. When we get to the end in the Q&A, you can ask Brandy all of your house number placement questions, but I'm going to give you a couple of starter suggestions. I don't think you should replace your house numbers where they are, because where they are right now is probably not a big enough spot to put in the right size of house numbers. And the right size for modern house numbers, in my opinion, is the biggest that will fit. You want these to be visible. They are a design statement, they are an accent to the house, and also they serve a purpose. You want the Amazon guy and the pizza delivery lady and your mail person to find your house easily. Also, all your friends. So big house numbers are what you want. And you can size them up and maybe bring them forward. Bring them off the wall of the house. They might not go back in the same spot where they were. They might come completely off the house entirely. This is an example of front door improvement or front door area improvement you might think about, which is to put a knee wall around the front yard. Most mid-century houses don't have fenced yards in the front because we like that sense of one lawn flows into another. It just sort of falls in with the English landscape garden philosophy of mid-century subdivision development. But that doesn't mean you can't still have a little fancy element in the front yard. And while this one, for example, isn't safe to keep like a 3-year-old contained, it's definitely enough to let a 6-year-old know, play in the front yard, don't cross that wall. And it is, in this case, picking up a material that was already happening elsewhere in the house. And it's a great place to put big honkin' front house numbers. So while you're thinking about these little fun improvements, I want you to just get creative with it. If you've done some of these things already, here's a list of a bunch of things you can do. I've said some of these already. Paint your front door, paint the storm door, paint the trim around the doors, paint the downspouts to also match the siding, paint the garage door and its trim to match the siding. There's no reason to have a white standout garage door. Garage doors aren't pretty. Even the nicest ones aren't pretty, so you want them to kind of blend in with the siding. You can replace your existing light fixtures, you can replace your mailbox, and you can upsize your house numbers. Going further, you could pull off your fake shutters. You could replace downspouts with a rain chain. You could add a bench or a planter by the front door. You can add a lot of different planter pots in fun colors. You could get a small table and a pair of chairs to put in a flat spot in your yard. You could add some sort of solar garden lights to highlight. If you have a stone wall or a brick wall or even an interesting siding texture, shine them up against the house. Shine them on your house numbers. All of these things are purchases or little weekend projects. It's the sort of thing you could do by yourself, you could do with your partner, you could do with a friend. All of these things are going on. And I just want to encourage you to tackle one of these things and then go forward. If you want to do bigger things, here are a couple of things to keep in mind before we get into our Q&A section. I call these the 4 cornerstones of mid-mod design: a playful mix of material, asymmetry, simple shapes, and flow between inside and out. So here's what I mean. A mix of materials means you probably don't have just one material on your house. You probably have siding, but also a little brick accent wall or stone, or maybe breeze block. If you don't have any of those accent materials, you could add one. And you want those materials to sort of talk to each other across the space. So often in a mid-century house, you'll see a brick knee wall on the front side, and the same brick is used in the fireplace on the inside. So that kind of gets down to our last one, the flow between inside and outside spaces. Also, I want you to think about as you do bigger projects, highlight the asymmetry of your house. So looking at this particular sketch, on the one side we've got a garage door with a man door, goes all the way down to the ground. Then in the middle we've got bigger social area windows that go a little deeper, and then on the far side we've got narrow, high windows. So the whole house has kind of an angle slant. If you walk out to the street in front of your house and glance at it, squint your eyes, you might see there's some higher parts and some lower parts, some bigger parts and some smaller parts. Lean into that as you continue to make more changes. By the way, don't be afraid to remove things. Start with the shutters. If you've got fake shutters on your house, go pull them off. Don't be scared. Yes, it'll be dirty behind there. Yes, there will be spiders behind there. That's why to take off the fake shutters, because gross, spiders. Mid-century houses don't need fake shutters. If your particular house has a shutter-like object that's clearly very designy, a crisscross pattern or doing something interesting, sure. Particularly if your style, your personal mid-century style leans a little bit more mid-mod, traditional or twee, that's fine. But if you just have vinyl siding and somebody stuck, probably glued fake shutters to the outside of it, take it off today and see what a difference it makes. I think you're going to like it. And this house, this project from a couple of years ago is a perfect example. It had been really remodeled, kind of like a modern farmhouse style. The shapes were right, but all of the materials were wrong. So it had fake shutters here, carriage style lamps here, the wrong kind of front door. And we just did replace and place and editing on the outside. I'm sure when someone came by after this project was complete, they would have thought we had done a lot to this house. But actually, we just put in a globe light and a bow tie instead of two carriage lamps, up to the modern house numbers, replaced the front door, and took fake shutters off of those windows. There was one shutter right here. It was so silly. Fake shutters, no. If you want to go further, here's a list of sort of brainstorming medium ideas. So you can add some twins to the column on your front porch. You can make the columns more interesting. Replace a simple post with a couple of 2x10s that are cut at a trapezoid angle. You can paint the whole house. Or you could replace the siding. But if you're DIYing, you're probably going to start with paint. You can add an accent wall that picks up a material you already have. Or if your house is boring, like mine was, with no accent materials, I added a cedar slat accent material because it was incredibly budget friendly and just made my house a little more interesting. You can replace your whole front door, particularly if in the 80s or 90s somebody put in like an oval leaded glass door to replace the original one. Replace it again with something more mid-century friendly and airtight. I highly recommend you check out the door kits from my friends over at Make It Mid-Century. You can just Google makeitmidcentury.com. They have really fun front door kits and garage door kits. What else? Bigger projects. You could end up replacing the siding, especially if you have vinyl. Put it on your long-term list to maybe go back to something, see if the original wood siding is underneath, might be salvageable, or go back to a wood replacement product like an LP Smart Side or James Hardie. Replace and expand the existing windows, choose a mid-century style, not vinyl double hungs. Extend the roof line. Make a covered front entry. Make an entry vestibule. Build a front patio with a cozy seating arrangement. Build a front deck with an L-shaped bench. All of these things are bigger on the to-do list. You're not going to get them done this weekend, but they might be something you start to aspire to and put on your someday list.